This is a very special place to start with and begin with. It's because Dave Mazer was my first trombone teacher, the soloist in the U.S. Army Band, Pershing's Own. And he would, my first note was fourth line F. Get your horn out. Here we go. Blah. And here we go. You know, and it was amazing. He was like a second father to me. And it was really, really phenomenal. What did I get from Dave Mazer? A love of music. I got when you're playing in this style, you play in this style. When you're playing in this style, you play in that style. When you play in that style, you play in that style. When you're playing Dixie, you sound like Abe Lincoln. You don't sound like swing. On and on and on. He was an amazing trombonist and musician. He had played in the big bands, Jen Savitt and several others. He played with Dorsey on occasion. And then he was principal trombone in Kansas City Symphony, principal trombone in North Carolina Symphony, and then he was soloist in Pershing's Own right here at Fort Myer. I am originally from Falls Church, Virginia. I grew up in this area, and I really salute the U.S. Army Band, Pershing's Own, for so many years of committed sponsorship of this our American Trombone Workshop. I mean, for many years when it was still called the Eastern Trombone Workshop, it was still truly a United States Trombone Workshop, which had some international guests that came, including a beautiful trombone choir from Canada, a performance earlier today. Hats off to them. Okay, I want to kind of go through some different ideas, most of which are a little different focus in the last few years that have helped a lot of my students, and so we'll go with that. I'd also like to thank Michael Rath Trombones as well. They take care of me during the year, and I'm proud to play their instrument. This morning I did an exercise called Rhythm. We're not going to do it right now because I want to save a little time and get to some other things, especially for those that have come to both sessions today. Rhythm is a word that I made up, copyright Don Lucas, right? And it's breathing in rhythm, okay? And during Casey Collins' lesson, and it's been often repeated since then, has been, we're working with a student and I'll say, where's that breath, that last breath you took? And they'll look at me and they'll go, and I'll say, okay, well, where's that? And they'll do it again. And I'll go, no, where is that? And it occurs to them, I mean rhythmically and metrically, where is that breath? Oh, it's on the end of two. Well, that does several things. One, it identifies to them rhythmically where that breath is, and that the breath is part of our rhythmic concept. And once you know it's on the end of two, then in theory, and hopefully in practice, you have to start subdividing into eighth notes before you take that breath on the end of two. Instead of just going, I'm out of air, breathe, and I come in when I feel like it. And from this point on, called a holiday breath. Okay? So I made up a little exercise and a word to go ahead and breathe in rhythm. If we had an exercise of 8 counts, and we exhaled our air, we took a breath, and we exhaled. And on 8, during a quarter rest, we took the breath, okay? Then we moved to eighth notes, 7 and 8. 7 la, li, 8 la. 60 enda, 70 enda, 80 enda. And in the course of doing that, there's a lot of benefits. One, you mark where the breath is. Therefore, you have to subdivide before you take the breath. And you practice doing it rhythmically. Therefore, when you get to your music, you've already practiced the ability of what you need to when you're playing the instrument as far as the breathing thing is concerned. Okay? I'm going to start with a couple things. I mentioned a couple things this morning. First is my very intellectual professorial definition of breath support these days. Right? After years of describing it in many, many different ways, if we took a breath and we just let go of the breath, mind you, a lot of our tuba colleagues are talking about let go of the breath. I don't actually believe in let go of the breath, but I know why they're doing that. In most cases, they're talking about don't over pressurize the breath. Okay? So let's say, what is the difference if we took a breath and we just let go? Okay? And what's the difference if we took a breath This is cool because I get to hear the flow, not just, experience the... Okay, but what would be the difference between those? And my definition of breath support is that something inside does something so it enables us to blow a steady stream of air. My very highly intellectual professorial way to do that. At any point that we add extra stuff to it, I think you just added tension somewhere else in the body, and we don't be needing to do that. Okay? So, but there's also a legitimate way about expressing that when we have more resistance, if I just put my hand, same thing when the aperture comes closing and smaller, and the back of the tongue comes up inside the mouth, and there's more resistance from those two places. But in any event, if we were going to go ahead and put more resistance when we blow out, something inside has to do a little more because of that resistance. But at no point do we do more than is necessary to blow a steady stream of air forward. Okay? So it's a legitimate thing that we have to support more when there's more resistance. Okay? And I don't believe we should add extra to it, nor do I believe we should let go. I think there's error on both sides. Okay, so if we talked a little bit about that, this breathing exercise, another thing that really came about is that I think we've kind of gone about it as trombonists and brass players in the wrong order. Because I think that one of our main goals was to empty the Earth's oxygen on every single breath. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go about it. Is that something useful when we have to play very loud, like minor fourth trombone quartet was talking about redlining it? Or Mahler or Bruckner or anything that really requires us to play a lot louder than we're used to. We need that air, and we do need a reserve. We need some reserve for everything we play. Okay? So, there are two ways to talk about conversational breath. One of them, that a person I respect very, very much in that this person's teaching, talks about that conversational breath to them means that you're just sort of talking mezzo forte like this. And then you just breathe, and you talk mezzo forte, and you just breathe. And it's just some kind of generic thing. That's one definition of how people talk about conversational breath, and this person doesn't agree with that, and neither do I. But there's another way that's talked about, and often anything that's talked about Chicago is, about breathing, is often Chicago believes this, and they talk about it completely, they believe this, and they believe completely this, the opposite. And great, the father of our sense of breathing for most of our teaching and through the ages was just wonderfully done with Arnold Jacobs. Absolutely. Okay? So in a case of conversational breath in a different way, it's like voice dynamics. And back in the day, Dr. Donald S. Reinhardt in the Encyclopedia of the Pivot System, which really was kind of a crazy title for his way to talk about brass playing and the dynamics for it, right? Not necessarily do we just tilt our horn so we can get amazing differences in range and connect them, which a lot of people interpret it that way. He talked about that, how would you inhale if you're going to whisper? I'm going to step a little bit away from the microphone so I don't kill the people online who are watching, right? But if I was going to shout, and my friend's about to walk in front of a train and I need to be about 8 Fs, I would go, and I take this big, very physical breath, as an automatic response to go ahead and shout very loud. If we're kids and we're playing hide and go seek, when she gets near the tree, make a run for it. Right? How would we inhale? So we wouldn't do the opposite and go, when she gets near the car, I hope I can keep my air hole back, but we need to go. No, you inhale the way you want to exhale, according to dynamics. And that is how I like a definition of conversational breathing, with some reserve. So what are the instances where it might be different? If you have to play forever on soft, then you do have to take a monstrous breath. But if you do not have to play forever in soft, you can go, etc. You wouldn't go if you have the time. If there's only an eighth rest, I'm not talking about, if there's a very small amount of time. But if you have the time, you want to breathe in the way that you want to exhale. With some reserve. Always with some reserve. Okay? So, if we want to come in soft, and we have, at the beginning where we have a soft entrance and we've had a bunch of time to breathe, I like to take a longer amount of time to breathe in. first time I heard the Paris Trombone Quartet play, and they came in some entrances, and I didn't hear them tongue. I didn't hear them tongue. They were not tonguing. They were using air starts in performance, and they had practiced air starts, which was more of a European thing, and I think that is widely taught now in the United States. So doing air starts. So if I wanted to start on the G flat above the staff and L, G, and E flat minor, I would not go all count, all purpose, no matter what I'm doing to exhale. I want to breathe in the way I want to exhale. Okay? I like what Ian Bousfield says. You want to breathe in the way you want to sound. That gives something tonally, that how we do it. And I think sometimes what we do with our throat, and that kind of dictates a lot of times automatically. We want to sound a certain way, we will go ahead and do that. Okay? So the rhythm exercise is fantastic, and if you could put it on the beginning of 8 counts, after you've worked on it for a couple of weeks, at the end of the 8 counts, that can be wonderful. Some things to watch out for. Are you putting a sforzando in the beginning of your inhale? Are you diminuendoing in the inhale? Are you stopping your air before you started your air because you weren't really thinking? How many in this room would agree that we should breathe in rhythm whenever possible? Everybody raise their hands. Fantastic. Okay? All right. So I believe that too. How can we do that if we're not thinking a pulse beforehand? We can't. So often, and I said this morning as well, we'll start inhaling, and then we'll think the tempo with the inhale, or stop our air, as opposed to, there's the tempo, and it's going that way, okay? Another thing has to do with production, and just as kind of a basic foundation before we go off into some other things here, and that is that if we wish to articulate, I like the idea that our ear is blowing forward, and we bump it with a legato tongue. With the young kids, I try and do that so that they can just blow air. That's an air start. That's how they start in England. I had a lunch with Dennis in November, talked about that. The first thing you have them do is no tongue at all, from touched lips. There seems to be a United States idea that we are forever closing into an efficient buzz. But not too much, so we're not pressing and it doesn't sound pinched, okay? So if you blow a steady stream of air with an air start, and then haphazardly I'll just do this kind of thing and want them to bump that steady stream of air. So they get the idea that the air is always flowing, and the tongue comes up and bumps the air. They get something else, which my colleague Terry Everson at Boston University, an amazing musician, trumpeter person, talks about. He said, remember, it's tongue with air, not just tongue. And I liked that sentence, but it didn't become part of my physiology, if you will, until I got the idea that if we went that feeling of the tongue coming up and bumping the air, now did it rhythmically, not just once in a while, right? That if we did that when we started the note, we had the idea of air with tongue. I hope that wasn't too fast to describe that. But if someone blows a steady stream of air and bumps it, and then they bump it rhythmically, and they get the idea of the air with the tongue, okay? Now you can start, and it's air with tongue. Not the tongue comes up early and does the proverbial, we need to clean up our attack. That's interesting. I wonder how we came about that terminology with a lot of wind ensembles. And I'm partly to blame because I taught in public schools in Virginia, North Carolina, and Texas as well. Okay? So this will be, I'm going to describe this for those people watching online, that it's almost as if our air had a mind of its own. And the first case is that if our air was willing to be steady, right, completely steady, that when any other distraction happens, our air wants to check out of being steady. So the first instance would be if I was walking and I'm demonstrating my air, and then I added the tongue. The air just says, that's it, I'm out of here. If the air was going forward and we add the tongue, that airflow wants to be inhibited. Okay, then we get used to going. When we add the tongue and the airflow is doing fine. Now we move the slide and the air goes. Nope. And any distraction. We move our jaw, do vibrato. We do different trills, right? We do different lip slurs. The air wants to not blow continuous. Yes, sir. The Remington was talked about the 3 T's, the tone, the timing, and the tuning. Right? And for all the people that are doing the Remington exercise, I've hardly ever heard it talked about with respect to the timing of the slide or the timing of the rhythm or the timing of the turnaround of the air. So the emphasis at first for them to be thinking that time and subdivision and that the air goes completely through the inhale. If it's on 4, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a... that they're doing that. They don't stop before then would be it. Okay? The second thing is the main reason that once people start thinking rhythmically and they stop there and have the hesitation because they stop the air. And the reason they stop the air is that the tongue comes up early. 2E and a 3E and a seal, rearticulate instead of 2E and a 3E and a... think we've got it all wrong with a lot of the breathing. We've taken in most of the Earth's oxygen on every breath, and it hasn't been directly the way we want it to play. I think we need to breathe in the way we want to play, and the way we want to sound, the way we want to use the air with some reserve, okay? And I think that what we should go about it, and rhythm helps this a little bit, this exercise, is that we should be on time, and comfortable, okay? On time and comfortable. So if you're on like triplets, 6 la li, 7 la li, 8 la. Do not attempt beginning to go with the younger students 6 la li, 7 la li, 8 la, and have this be a huge amount of air. Just 7 la li, 8 la. Now if I'm doing this away from the microphone, you don't hear as much sound. 7 la li, 8 la. And then you can add more air without sacrificing on time and comfortability. On time is 2 parts. We're thinking rhythmically, the breath starts at this point, but it turns around exactly on time. If you have your hand, 7 la li, 8 la, you feel the air hit the hand to be able to do that, okay? So on time and comfortable should be the new sheriff in town, and without sacrificing on time and comfortable, add more air and more air and more air. One caveat that I talked about this morning, and that is that if you're often having push-offs, or a clip of a release of a note, have you ever been told by a teacher or something, or you've caught yourself da, 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 and you have a clipped note right before the breath. The clipped note is usually because there is that famous Russian, Andrei Pushoff, that is pushing off the end of that release. 2 and 3 and I'm here to tell you that does not help. 6 and 7 and 8. Not, right? I sang a thing this morning that I'll give you some enjoyment with, Lebedev. Any bass trombonists here? Ba da 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 ba 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 da 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 ba da 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 da. Does not help. In fact, the opposite. Let's put a little diminuendo, or as my colleague Toby Off says, put a little taper on that release, and I think that will help a whole lot. Okay, I think I've covered most of this first bit. All right, what's musical? I hear this phrase thrown around a lot. Oh, it's so musical. I'll say, well, what do you mean? Well, it just had that certain something. I'm not here to make fun totally of it had that certain something intangible. But I think that there needs to be a foundation of what is musical. And then if it has something else that's not, that's a little difficult to describe, it's an intangible, I think that's fine, right? So what is the style of the music that you're trying to project? Because often I hear music and there is no intended style projected. What is that? It's not music. Okay? In fact, Eric Crease years ago, principal of Covent Garden Opera in England, he talked about, because if we kind of don't have that, then all we have left is semi-skilled note getting. How do you like that for a term, right? So if you're playing a bunch of notes and it's clearly supposed to demonstrate a style, and it doesn't demonstrate enough projected style so the audience receives it, then okay, that's something that's missing. The other thing is most music should have a direction of musical line. The notes are going here and they're coming away from here. Pablo Casals said, great cellist conductor or musician, said this is music and this is music and this is not music. Okay, we can pick exceptions on it, but generally speaking, there's a direction of a musical line that's going somewhere and then it's coming away from somewhere, just like we do in our spoken language. Okay, and to be able to do that. So if I'm hearing some intended music and I don't hear a projected style and there is no direction of line, I'm just hearing a bunch of aimless helter-skelter notes. Okay? So if I hear those other things and then it has an intangible, a certain quality in the color of the sound or other things that we tried to describe, then that's fine. But I think that we have not often made that the main thing that you're after. All right, let me make a very trite story and everything. Years ago, and occasionally you see it late night, you see this info commercial for this roaster. And it has a name. I'll leave the brand name out. It's being broadcast. But in any event, there's this canned audience that presumably are being paid to say, yay, this is the greatest product. You should buy it. And so they have this chicken. They put it in there. And then they do it. And then they close the door. And then they start the oven. And the audience cheers and says a slogan about it. Okay? But right now, if you'll pay $19.95, 3 payments of that, plus free shipping and handling, right, we're going to throw in the flavor injector. That is so wrong on so many levels. We don't have time for that today. We're going to have it taste more like chicken after the fact with some kind of syringe and chemicals and whatnot. Aren't we doing that with music? That's just, how many times have you heard, let's just get the notes and the rhythms first? I can't think of a more unmusical phrase right now. Right? I'll ask the student, what are you aiming for? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe look at the title. That might be a good reference. So I was on an international jury, and if the people went from the quarterfinals to the semifinals, they could pick one of 2 pieces. One of those 2 pieces was Prelude and Dance by John Mortimer. And I like it as an encore piece in that type of slot in recitals. And 4 of them chose that piece in the semifinals. And I just have one question as I'm sitting there with a pencil going, show me some dance. Come on, show me some dance. Where's the dance? In that particular occasion, all 4 of them showed me 0 dance. And I was like, just show me 1% dance. Why? They're not aiming for it. All right, let's bring it a little closer to home. How about the famous Bordoni-Rochu etudes? Bordoni wrote them, right? That's something you play at the pool. Marco Bordoni, right? Actually, that's an Italian composer, and Bordoni actually wrote that music. Who knew? Because Johannes Rochu, the French trombonist who transcribed and compiled them and put them all together, his name's big and Bordoni's really, really small. But to this date, I've never heard anyone sounding Italian rubato. Why? I think there's a problem, and the problem is us, the teachers. Okay? You need to aim for that style, and you need to project it a lot, and the direction of line when pop line. I want to talk about, this is kind of a serious thing, but I hear it thrown around a lot, and there's some different opinions about it, so I'll weigh in on the matter. Right? There seems to be 2 overall operating systems with playing trombone. One is that you listen to music, you listen to live performances, you listen to your teacher performing live, right? And you get an idea of your concept, and and you sing, which is huge. And you get this concept really strong, and then what you do technically, you're trying to be able to have that idea, then it's so strong with this concept that the body just does what it needs to do. I think that's correct to a point, but I think just like a lot of error, I think it can be done 2 ways. One is that if we go into that, and I think we should, by strengthening our concept, I think we should do that, and that is the main operating system. But every once in a while, after we've done that for a long period of time, the body doesn't cooperate. There are those that say you never tell the body what to do. You never isolate what happens physically with the body, and I do believe we do some of that, and it's in the correct place. When you stop and you tell your body, the ear should do this, or the tongue should do that, and you go slow, step by step with musical physical therapy, that once it starts to take root, let's say you're wanting to play prelude and dance, and something's not working technically there, and your concept is strong, and that's leading the way, and it should. And you're doing lots of singing, because I think that's the number one thing that cements it. Okay? And you're doing it, and you have one little problem here physically, and you stop. Let's say you're going to drive from here down to Miami, and that's your goal musically, and you stop by a rest stop, and you tell your body to slowly do something with musical physical therapy. I believe that that's okay. What I believe should happen is once it starts to take root, you get out of that rest stop, and you go back to concept driven. Okay? Now this, on both sides, I think, can be all kinds of trouble. There's been people who've stopped and told their body what to do for everything, and they've made permanent condos in the rest stop, and they have then told their body what to do for everything. And I believe that that has affected people. Some people, where there are short circuits in the neural pathways, and it's created problems. I think concept-driven is the main thing. What I have another question is, we have a lot of students in ear training and sight singing, and I've assigned them some music, an excerpt, a solo, whatever they're working on, maybe once in a while an ensemble part and an etude, and actually I'm asking them to play, and then I'll say, can you sing that phrase? And they cannot sing that phrase to save their life. Then my question is, what's going on with the student in those classes? Are they making it relative to be able to hear better when they play and conduct? And are the teachers making it relative? You know, I don't know at all, but I believe that there should be, that we should be able to hear better. And years ago, I asked Victor Semyonkin, the legendary teacher at St. Petersburg, Rimsky-Korsakov State Conservatory of Music in St. Petersburg, Russia. I asked him, because there's a few players, most notably Alexander Gourbanov, who's in one of the Russian National Orchestras in Moscow, that the famous violinist Spivakov conducts. I asked him about, how do you develop better intonation? And he fired off the fastest solfege I've ever heard in my life. And my teacher, Robert Deal, who used to teach at Oberlin Conservatory and then taught at Texas Tech, he was a pretty amazing solfege person. It was just incredible. And so were other people that were around, Mary Jean Van Apeldoorn, Jim Sudduth, amazing sight singing. They would sight sing, you know, outrageous stuff and see who could last and do the best and have competitions. Amazing. And Victor Semyonkin just fired off the fastest solfege I've ever heard in my life to the Tomasi Concerto, to the Saratsky Sonatina, and a couple other pieces. And I thought he misunderstood the question. And then as often I figured out in my life, no, I misunderstood the answer. That they teach it in Europe to such a degree that it becomes relative so that intonation is better. Wow, that blows my mind. But I think we need to make it relative about that. By the way, if you're going to be working with drones with intonation, the way you get better, like in everything else, is slow, step by step. If you could have a drone going on with outside speakers, that's not earbuds, because the vibrating through the body messes up things. And you have and if you can hum along with that and kind of match the tone color, the timbre, what's going on, and while that drone's going on, you could sing so slowly, up a half step and then back in tune, and do it so slowly that you could make an even accelerando and an even retard of beats. That's insanely slow. Then we would have a chance to hear slower, the smallest increments. Going sharp, coming back in tune. Going flat, coming back in tune. Some students I've worked on with drones like that, and it's been fantastic, particularly with Stephen Colley's tune-up system. That's worked very, very well. And if the students would do 12 minutes a day of slow glissando of accelerando of beats and slow retard of accelerando beats till there were no beats, That would really, really, really help a lot. Okay, steady airflow and then randomly bump, then bump it rhythmically and stiffen the tongue, etc., etc. Taming the slide. I see two overall problems of the slide sort of not behaving. I grew up and I was with a teacher that was phenomenal, different than Dave Mazur. He's remained nameless for this particular instance, but his school of thought was that the slide pretty much remained continuous because it was smoother and we operated it smoother. If the music justifies that type of thing, it has a little bit of glisten to it, okay, then I think it could be justified. But to pick a technique as one size fits all, as opposed to what is the music asking for, is not the real approach. So continuous slide has been, I think, a national slide problem for many years, and we're getting better and better and better. I do believe that the slide should stop at each position, and unless it's blazingly fast. Arthur Pryor, Derek Bourgeois Concerto, Barnacle Bill, Turkey in the Straw, you know, whatever we're working on that is blazingly fast, okay? So what causes the slide then to kind of creep? Well, if it's continuous motion, that's one. If we're going ta-da, that's another one. We leave early on the first note before the rhythmic value of the first note is done. We didn't stay full duration. We leave early and we get a bad deal because we get there late even though we left early. That's actually sort of like my morning this morning. In any event, if we can play ta and stay full value and then go on time, I believe that can clean up a lot of things, okay? That's kind of the general thing about as far as slide, okay? Fixing runs of groups of 4 notes. Do you have your trombones? Let's get them out. So, we're going to play a C scale starting on second space C. One E and a, 2 E and a. Right? 16th notes. Okay. I'll give you a moment to get your slide out. Horn out. Pianists and string players have had a method for body movement to clean up the movements of their instruments. Okay, actually their bodies, if it's like string players, they're moving their actual hand positions and fingers to the next position, if you will. So they use the same terminology as us, right? But most of that teaching has not arrived into trombonedom, if you will. Okay? So if you have that scale, bum, 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 let's try it. Okay? Please start in 6. So we have 6, well, flat 6, flat 4, flat 2, flat 1. If we're on the F partial and you're slightly sharp, etc. 2 E and a, ready and a, breathy and a. Okay, if you were to tongue those notes, you probably wouldn't chew. Dun, 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 dun. You probably wouldn't chew, and you probably wouldn't tut as much. Tut, 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 where the tongue comes back and cuts off the end of the note. Just keep. Yesterday in my 4th clinic, you were talking about blowing air. Can everybody do that? When you added your tongue, did your air go, nope, I'm out of here? Or did it continue to go forward? Blowing forward, da, 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 not forward diminuendo, or forward lift, almost stop when the tongue was added. Now you have a chance to keep the air going when the tongue adds. You keep the air going, ready and okay, do that with your trombone. 2, ready, and that's a great exercise. And we have all kinds of forms of tonguing and articulating on one single note. Every other day, I think it would benefit us to tongue over the partials, because not all music is just tonguing on a repeated note. Okay? Okay, so if you would check out your tonguing, you might understand that you might have started and you're playing staccato. I'm one of the people that don't believe we should intentionally play staccato on runs. We don't play to 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 to. That's too long and sounds logy. Ta 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 ta, where it sounds clean and we're blowing it forward is kind of a medium length. And then tut 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 tut, where the tongue seals and stays near the top of the roof of the mouth, and the tone suffers. I heard a junior high band director who was outstanding years ago, Leela Boyd Montgomery, at a school outside of Austin, Texas, and he was talking about don't let the tongue obliterate the tone. This is one way the tongue has been obliterated the tone. Play something in the middle that keeps a line going. Now everybody blow that same air towards your hand, and can you feel it? So ta 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 ta, 2 beats, and then you articulate. Ta 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 ta. Is the air continually touching your hand? Second time, and ta 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 ta. Okay? So if you articulate on one note, do we change the tongue or change the air when the slide starts moving? Do we go towards tut disease? Because our slide might be slow, do we back off the airflow? So I think the air unconsciously is going to help a brother out, help a sister out, right? That if the slide is not there on time, it's going to back off the continual flow of the air. No, we keep the flow and make this happen in rhythm. Yes, Bruce? The comment from the audience, from Doc, from Bruce Dougherty, is that he, instead of just bumping the airstream, that he thinks of the word dent, to be able to just dent that airstream, right? It's not sealed. We're in agreement for that. And that's what tut disease is, okay? Here we go. Everybody sing or play, if you have a trombone, whatever you have. 2 E and a ready. Here we go. Hold it. Good. Does it feel a little different that you're actually blowing through your articulation? Okay. Now, move the slide and have the blow through and the articulation not change. Ta 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 ta. Half note, then we have 2/16 of the scale. 2, ring, ta, ta. First thing you notice is our slide is terrible. Right? So our air is going to help our brother and sister out and not, and kind of back off that flow to make up for the inaccuracy of the slide. Right? So what pianists and string players have done before to actually have the slide stop in the right place is to think, I call this Mr. Spock's school of slide cleanliness and rhythmic development. Okay? It's sort of really live long and some prosper or something, right? Okay? So it's dotted 8th and 16th, and then this is 16th and dotted 8th. Okay? So if we play. Okay? We'll do a half note before that. Ta 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 ta. Here we go. Trombones and singing. 2, ready, and ta 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 ta. Good. Did you creep from the C to the D before time? Ba da da move. Da 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 wait move. A way to tell is to play the subdivision with a legato tongue. So you can measure it. Okay? Let's just start right on that without a half note. Da 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 da. Da 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 stay, da 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 stay, da 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 stay, da 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 stay. Got it? Ready? And Does that feel jerky, everybody? Yes, because the rhythm is kind of jerky. Does it mean it actually is jerky? Listen to the sound when you record yourself, and if it sounds jerky, it's jerky. If it feels jerky and it doesn't sound jerky, it's not jerky. Just because it feels like it, we could say, oh no, we can't do that. Let's turn that around and go ta ta da da ta ta da da ta ta da da ta ta da da. Here we go. Reverse it, 16th 3/8. And let's play the subdivision. 2, 3. I guarantee you, if you'll do that a bunch, you will clean up that run faster in your life than you ever have. But I want to play it 12,000 times for the next 5 weeks because I'm used to that. Well, maybe that's not the best approach like I had done for a number of years. Okay? So if you want to clean up groups of notes of 4, 16th dotted 8. I'm sorry, dotted 8, 16th. Then turn around and go 16th dotted 8. If you need to double up and play the subdivision, that'll help. A word about subdivision. Was there any of you out there that ever wanted to ask a question and you didn't, of your teachers and directors, as they yelled at you the 52nd thousandth time, subdivide, subdivide? Did you ever have a question? Excuse me, sir, ma'am, how can I hear the subdivision louder in my head? I'm trying. How can I hear it more even? The answer is play the subdivision. Or marching band drum lines going are they just doing that for their hands? I think they're doing that for their minds as much as they are for their hands. Playing the subdivision ingrains a steadiness. What's the main purpose of a metronome? Steadiness. And oh, by the way, here's your 72 from Mozart Requiem Bolero. Right? There's your tempo reference to be able to do that. That steadiness of the beat. By playing the subdivision, it can help a lot. And you know what it also does? When you do that rhythm, you can identify the exact movement that's been stinking up that run. You're the one that's messing that run up. And you can identify it, and you can fix it. You can clean it up. All right, so we had lots of fun with, and many of you did, with the Osteoblast Derek Bourgeois trombone octet piece. And in there is just this constant triplet runs. Okay? How do you clean up your triplet runs? Okay? You clean up your triplet runs by playing 8th through 16th. So original. So and then this is hard for Mr. Spock. 16th, 8th, 16th. Trust me that there isn't one note in all these exercises that's longer before the same movement in the run. And it prepares the body to do the same movement longer in our head. Okay? Today in Western music, there's 3 points of intonation. One is just intonation, and that is chordal intonation, if you will, or we have in relationship to adjust the notes together. Okay? Right? We lower the major third a little bit, the minor third goes up a little bit, or a little bit more. The perfect fifth goes up a tiny bit, right, etc., etc. In its natural state in the harmonic series, notes in first position, if we played them all from bottom to top, that would be a big chord and they would just work out really good. If we remove those tendencies, we get to equal temperament, which is 12 equal half steps in an octave. And then the next one is when we're playing by ourselves, melodic tuning. It's like equal temperament, 12 equal half steps, but we bend the half step the direction of the melodic line. And our first theory teacher told us 7 wants to go to 1, it's the leading tone, and then no longer talked about it. But it's melodic that happens in that way. How do we interact with it? When we play by ourselves, that's melodic tuning. When we play with a piano, which I think is the most neglected time that we spend, especially with an in-tune piano, then each of those half steps have to be in tune, or a single note on the tuner. We can use the tuner as a tonic and adjust the thirds, the fifths, and the other harmonic notes, etc., etc. Okay? I think we interact with those 3 particular areas, and it will help a whole lot. Here's the very last thing. It's the concept of stay full duration. Folks, if you stay full duration on one note and then move the slide, then you can move in time. We've talked about that. You think that, and you move the slide. If you go early, you'll get there late. That's the slide movement. The other is the vowel movement. We're oblivious to the vowel movement, the put down and the let go. But lip slurs in my final segment. At Tango in the Summer, I asked some talented high school students if any recordings been selected for the trombone workshop. I said, can we play this lip slur pattern? Just maybe, are you playing that in time? Of course we are. Okay, let's go shopping. When you put legato subdivision with it, ta-da, ah-da, ah-da, a natural slur, ta-da, ah-da, 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 ah-da. When you do that, you can play them on time. But you know what? It's not the on time that was the biggest benefit after I did it. The biggest benefit was if I subdivided, ta-da, I wasn't leaving early. And if I don't leave early with the embouchure change, then the next note was amazingly more centered. And that's been revolutionizing in my teaching. So now when I warm up, often I'll go da 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 da, or I'll play doubled up on the subdivision and do my slurs that way, and it's amazing how much better, quicker they get to. Thank you very much for your attention.